Great. Justin Lober, I play bass, guitar. It is a bass guitar. I can count on one hand the number of times that I've plugged a USB port in or plug in incorrectly. Just probably less than 5.
It's amazing.
It's what you get for putting me on the spot.
I'm Jordan Lober. I play drums. I play all acoustic instruments. This is my dog, Lucy.
John Huxley, I play guitar and I sing.
Josh Emery, I play guitar and do less singing.
I mean, we're really sad not to have Jake with us anymore because, for a lot of reasons. I mean, Jake is one of the most innately musically talented people I've ever met. I mean, it makes me fucking feel bad just because, like, when we were kids, like, I'd work at it and he would just have it. But at the same time, we're just, for where we're going as a band and what Jake's doing in his life, this was the right decision for everybody. So, we wish Jake the best, and we love him with all of our hearts. But at the same time, we feel that this is the best version of Jakethehawk for the music that we've written. This is the best way that we can present it to people. So, just moving forward, we couldn't be more positive as a group. We couldn't be happier to have Josh with us, because there's just a whole different layer of creativity right now, and just as far as everything works. Honestly, I don't think I could say it any
Lucy
better than
approves.
Lucy did, so let's, that's about it.
We kind of go for more of a Caius vibe, but also incorporated with a lot of 70s hard rock. Take a lot of influences from Grand Funk Railroad, Led Zeppelin, The Doors, but also take those really cool deserty and grungy vibes from Caius, Soundgarden, some Queens of the Stone Age, and a bunch of other awesome bands from out west, and also bands that we see, just that come through Pittsburgh themselves. Howling Giant, I've taken some of my own musical influences away from Zach himself, and it's great. But it's just we try to appeal to a more or less a broad audience, I guess you could say. We like to appeal to people our age, but also the old heads as well. And we've kind of found a decent way to capture that. A lot of times we see someone that's in the, middle-aged, and they come up to us and say, "I'm so glad there's people still doing something like this, because this is what I grew up listening to. This is what I really, really like to listen to." So that's kind of where we're kind of going with it, I suppose.
My perspective on it is I'm a big fan of all of the stoner rock stuff, but at the same time, I kind of want to break away from that. I wrote this album with the intention of it not being fully riff driven. There's a huge lyrical aspect, there's a huge textural aspect, there's a huge kind of aspect of progression throughout the record that I think, there's a lot of records that I love, they're like stoner rock, that just do one thing and they do it really well the whole time, and I didn't want to do that. And I'm not saying that we're better than those records, and I'm not saying that, you know, we're doing this thing better. But one thing that I wanted to keep in mind was not trying to beat that formula to death. So if anything, I didn't want to do the formula. As an outsider, just being recently joining the band, what is your thought on that?
Well, I mean, for me, when I first got the message and I was, you know, really closely listening to the thing, it was really that desert sound that really appealed to me. Talking about the kind of Caius sort of thing, but then trying to think about what I could bring to the table that was maybe a little different. Was a little more kind of post-punk and sort of even post-rock kind of influence, like really try to accentuate as much of that space in a desert sound as I possibly could.
All over that, man. All over the post-rock.
Yeah, for sure.
Just nice on that, I suppose.
I mean, I don't really per se have a whole lot to do with like the songwriting aspect of it per se, but what I can speak to is like sort of my background and like what kind of energy I want to bring to it. So I'm just like a metalhead, and my whole steez is that I want to create the heaviest, most aggressive bottom line for these two to just soundscape over top of it, basically. Like that's just as heavy and as crushing as I can possibly get my bass to sound, and it works out because I can just play single notes, nice and easy. But the purpose of that, yeah, obviously, is kind of for them to soundscape it out. But like you mentioned, you know, like what do you want people to kind of get out of your music? We obviously we make music for, you know, people who are into music. You know what I mean? People that, you know, are gonna be able to be like, oh, that is a very, you know, deserty riff, and not be like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? We write music for people like that. However, my favorite. The best feedback we ever get at shows always comes from the outsider. Like Jordan was saying, like some middle-aged guy who was just there because, you know, one reason or another, or, you know, some person who may have not ever really seen a live band before, and their experiences with live music were like, oh, okay, what kind of covers are you going to play? And whenever somebody who comes from just like a casual listening kind of perspective watches what we do and finds something in there that they enjoy, that's what I do it for. It's aggressive, yes, but people I think are like automatically turned off. People who would otherwise maybe enjoy a lot of things that are found in aggressive music, if it wasn't maybe as heavy or as down-tuned, perhaps. I don't know. That's one way to look at it. But there's, I feel like I want those people, the casual ones, to realize, hey, there's more to this. You know, I can go and I can find music without the radio telling me what to listen to, or MTV, or whatever the fuck else it is. Like,
MTV doesn't exist anymore, I don't think.
That's right. I'm sorry. I forgot about that. All right, edit that out.
Rip.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I think my favorite thing about this band is to be like, look, I forgot it. I don't know. I want to make music for not just the people who are going to be like, obviously knowing what our influences are and you know all that, but I want it to be enjoyable for the casual listener, for them to find something else in music that they maybe never looked at before. You know, that's my favorite thing about what we're doing, I think.
Well, the song came about, I don't think I wrote it intentionally to be a 4-song concept piece. I just started writing the first one, and then I started writing the first one, and it was, you know, a cool song. And then I started writing the second, and then the second one I was just kind of like listening to it, and I had like the same metronome playing, and I was like, oh, this is neat. And then it kind of started to occur to me, this could be a thing. And then it just could, but it was written entirely in order simply. It was written entirely in order. It was written all just like on acoustic guitar in my bedroom. And then, and originally it was like 3 songs. I had the first 3, and then the 4th one just kind of hit me. I felt like 3 was good. It was done. But then the 4th one just kind of hit me, and I was like, this is great. And then I demoed it out, and I just like posted it on our group chat, and Justin was like, this is sick, or something. I don't know. That's what Justin sounds like.
Yeah.
The first piece is about someone who's dissatisfied, so they rage against society, and it's a very political song. And they're going to fix it by raging, they're going to create revolution. They're going to rage against society. The second piece is about being like, well, that's not going to work. I'm going to, I'm out. Fuck off. I'm done. I'm leaving. The song Parting Glass is, and the term Parting Glass is sort of an archaic term, I guess. There's a fantastic Celtic song called that, but the Parting Glass is the when you cheers somebody goodbye. Is what the Parting Glass is. So that's the kind of, fuck off, I'm done song. And then the third piece, the song Recluse, is like, oh, well, I'm going to go and be happy and cleanse myself and live in solitude, and then I will find my happiness, because society was terrible and I'm leaving. And then the fourth song, Geotaxis, is when the protagonist comes to the realization that they cannot fully shed society without realizing that they are part of it. They are not, all of the things that they dislike about humanity or society or whatever, is ultimately part of them. And, so the letters in my name dissolve in the humus and are washed away. So it's kind of left up to interpretation whether or not they die, or, in a more sort of fantasy setting, maybe they are just consumed by the trees. But, but ultimately, if you were to, totally abandon society or say, fuck this all sucks, the point is that, it's all kind of on you in one way or another. You're part of it. You're not above it, is kind of the whole point of To Build a Fire, is that you cannot just totally abandon that and just claim to be above it. Or even if you were to leave in some way and go live in a house in the woods, you're still a person and you're still a product of your influences. And that's kind of what it's about, ultimately. And then the piece To Build a Fire, it's named after a short story by Jack London, which is just about basically a guy who's arrogant, and he's like, oh, I can handle it. I'm going to go walk through the Yukon in the winter, and ultimately ends up freezing to death. Just because that was mostly a cooler name than calling it The Call of the Wild, which is a much better story. It was kind of a bitch because I got really good at playing that To Build a Fire theme, and then every time I needed something cool, and then on the rest of the songs on the album, I was like, oh, well, I'm not just going to throw that theme in there. I'm going to make up a new one. So, because To Build a Fire has some really great musical themes. In addition to the lyrical themes, there's a couple of musical motifs that repeat through the song, and they're orchestrated in different ways, so you don't necessarily they're not jumping out at you at first, but they exist in every song in different ways, whether they're in chord progressions, whether they're in overlays and stuff.
Well, that was really interesting. When you asked me to join the band, wasn't just a handful of here's the tunes we play. There were these really interesting, and they're pronounced when you learn how to play them, motifs that run through. So that there are themes that kind of come in and out, and musically that was a really, really cool thing I've never had in a band that I played in before.
Well, thank you. Well, that was so. Honestly, the difficult part was after writing side A, and not necessarily I didn't write side A and then side B in order, but still, when fleshing out side B, it was hard not to jump back to that. So honestly, it wasn't bringing it back. It was more trying to break away from that mentally. And I still feel when we sit down to write the next album, it's going to be hard to break away from that mentally after doing this like big chunkle thing. That's kind of the bigger thing, because once you set into it, like I like the themes, so it's hard to, now that we got it and it's good.
Do you think there's any callback at all in Strand? Maybe.
I didn't mean there to be.
It seems there is.
It seems like it really does, coming from. I don't want to
There's
call
that-
it an outsider perspective, but obviously someone who I don't handle any of the music writing. I just but listening to it all coming from engineering it and listening to it, on loop for 5 years straight, or just a month or two. But
Well, I mean, it's in one of the 3 scales that I know.
I don't know any scale other than the pentatonic scale.
I don't
And
know
that is
any.
the only scale there is. That is the only one that I need to know.
Skill good.
But I feel like there is some, and it could just be like humans want to kind of make sense out of
Patterns.
make patterns out of disorder. Yeah. So like you see a ghost on your ceiling and it's really just shadows and bullshit. It could be part of that in Strand. But just something about, especially whenever it breaks down and you just hear that acoustic, picking part, and then the kind of weird drum jungle groove comes in. Bound man.
Well, I may have subconsciously done that just because that's the way that I write melodies. Well, originally, we were going to do a whole separate album of like all the songs that we'd written as a band. Up until that point, we're like, we got to put everything out. And then we were like working on it. We were like 75% of the way done, and they exist somewhere. And then I think we were at Tina's in Bloomfield, just like drinking heavily. And one of us was like, it was probably me. I was like, guys, we got to start over. And I was like, so, because I had this thing called To Build a Fire that was like, oh, this will be the next one. But then we're like, we should just make this one. We should start the fuck over. And we're going to do it this way. And we're going to do it on these days. And we're going to go for it. And I couldn't be happier that we did. But we came into it and we were planning on doing To Build a Fire and then the first 3 songs of side B. And then we were going to redo Valley of the Witch from the first album and just, do it better. But I'm glad we didn't do that for song 8 for 2 reasons. One, because maybe we could have recorded Valley of the Witch better, but I don't think we could have recorded with more like spank than we did on the first one. Like the first record isn't like the best sonically, but I think it's got like all the vibe in the world, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. And secondly, the song Strand was like a demo that I had, and we kind of decided that we were sick of Valley, at the time from playing it a million times. So we just took a demo that I had and kind of expanded upon it, and I think Justin was working on some drums in the basement or something, and I just went up to the live room with his Taylor and a bottle of tequila. This is real shit. And some butcher paper, and I just started drinking and fucking around, and the whole acoustic second part of Strand I just like come up with like that evening, and I was like, guys, we're doing this. So we like learned it the next day and we fucking put it down. So that's what's on the album. That's what's really cool about that song, is everything else had like some thought going into it, but Strand was like really spur of the moment, and we had never played it live as a band. It was totally written in the studio, and it was just like, we're just going to go for it. We're just going to do this, and we'll figure out the overdubs in the overdub session. We'll just figure it all out. And that was really, really exciting. And I've never really quite done it in that way before, so I was really excited about that, so it's neat. A good friend of ours, Joe Maruck, Red Buffalo Illustration is his
Good stuff.
company, and he's the man. He does beautiful things, and honestly, you couldn't throw a stone in Pittsburgh without hitting, something that he was on. He's absolutely incredible. What I take away from that, what he told me, because when we went to commission the art, I just told him, because I lived with Joe while I was writing To Build a Fire, so we were kind of he was in my headspace. So I just played him the songs, And I said, this is it, and I want, kind of this kind of atmosphere. I said, I don't want, some silly psychedelic landscape or, something like with mushrooms and stuff. I was like, but other than that, do what you want because you're a fucking fantastic artist and you understand what I'm going for. And he gave that to me, and the only thing that I suggested, I was like, we should have a little guy with a fire, and then the guy with the fire not on the back, but um it's all him. I mean, we just gave him complete freedom for that. And what I take away from it personally is the little guy with the fire. He's kind of sitting on the edge, and on one side of him, he's got this, horrible, unforgiving, frozen wilderness, and then on the other side of him, where he's sitting with his fire, is just this fathomless abyss. So he's kind of in a sort of a rock and a hard place situation, and which is kind of I think maybe a theme. I don't know, but just kind of that kind of hopeless, like, where do you go? That's what I take away from it. But that's my own personal interpretation of the piece. The way that I work, I'll usually demo a song, like top to bottom. I'll have a beginning, have a middle, have an end. But when you bring it to the band, the way we play it, like, it could be like just like the way the groove works, the way to be really cheesy, like to super misquote some philosophy. What the Tao is you can have the notes on the page, but the Tao is the melody. And I bring the notes on the page, and what Jakethehawk brings is the melody. And if what that means is, I think that the way the four of us play something gives it this like particular flavor. I mean, because any song that I've written, you could listen to a demo of, and it's, it has the melody, it has, some structure, but we'll change the structure or whatever. But it's like what really gives it, it's like, the real big, the beats. And I don't mean like, the down beats, but I mean like the beats, like if it was a movie, like the actual beats in the song is what we find as a band. And that's only found, I could write a song like, and just say note for note the way it's going to be, but you only find the beats when you play it as a band a bunch of times, and you really find that together. And, you only after you play it a ton of times. And that's what I look for. And like, I could even, write a song and be like, this is okay, but I like these things about it. I want to take it to the band, and I want to do this. And that's what's important to me. But at the same time, I'm also like, I have zero desire to play a song that my bandmates aren't passionate about. If they're not into it, like, this is not the kind of thing where, I just want to, have a band to play my music. Because there's MIDI for that shit. And I've done like 7 or 12 albums on the internet that you can go fucking listen to that are that. And I like them a lot, but that is not Jakethehawk.
Well, I've even noticed, like, since I started playing with you, which it hadn't been that long, like even on like Recluse, for example, like you'll hit that arpeggio with me. There's like a dynamic shift that even in the short time I've been in, I noticed like you guys have like really, really, really responded to. So
it's like that's why I love playing with Josh, because Josh is like, if anything, he's a really precise guitar player, and he's like really, really conscious of like every little thing that he does. Poodle bear.
And there's more Lucy.
more loose.
More Lou.
Back with the juice.
The juice is loose.
The juice is loose. But and that's what's awesome about playing with Josh, in addition to him being different from Jake, and like Josh is like a really precise guitar player, and he really cares about not only what he's playing, but exactly how it sounds. And And that's like really inspiring because it like makes me like focus on what I'm doing, because it's like the thing, I can sit and write a song like, that I think is great in my apartment, but then as soon as I bring it to the band and somebody does something with it, then I'm like, "Oh man, I could do this better and I want to improve." And that's what I fucking care about. Like, it's not about just like doing like the cam show or something. It's about bringing it to the band and surrounding yourself with people that inspire you and people that are good at things that you're not good at. And that's why I love being in this band, and that's why we're so happy to have Josh in the band, because Josh is good at a ton of things that I suck at. And he's a totally different style of guitar player than I am, and that's what's awesome, because like I think we both make we have like a cool dynamic, even though we've only been playing together for like a month or something, but like I think we got a really good vibe and it like works really well. So that's why I'm really excited right now, and why I don't lament the lineup change, why I'm looking to the future more than anything.
Well, so that's pretty much my whole thing. Just in the rear with the gear. It's just the gear. That's my thing. I'm not really great at writing music, but I can write bass lines and I can record stuff. So I got started recording, back whenever I was like 16 or 17, whenever I was playing in bands back home in Johnstown. And it was really like there were studios around, but like for what you were paying for, you weren't really like getting a whole lot. So it was really more of like it was a financial, decision. I could go and pick up a cheap 4-track recorder and make an acceptable recording for MySpace, and it would work out just fine. And then, but for as far as that all started at like 16, and then I've recorded a couple other of my friends' bands and stuff, but the biggest thing for me, at least doing this album specifically, was it's to learn, really. And I learned a shitload recording this album. Me and Cam will always say like it's a pretty ambitious undertaking, like what we ended up doing. And
Well, I made you put acoustic guitars on like 80% of it.
that's the thing. So like whenever I say I recorded stuff, I mean I recorded like mostly metal, like pretty aggressive, and that's all just wall of sound. Certain way you EQ your drums, what have you. And I mean I made that work sound really good. I've never recorded anything quite like the music that we're playing right now. So part of it was also like, oh yeah, I can do it, but also like, can I do this? You know what I mean? Like I want to like, it was part of it was challenging myself, but also like, I have all this gear and all these microphones, and I'm like, I'm full of shit if I don't actually do something really cool with them.
Recording it ourselves, coming from a bassist and a drummer, or even Justin started off on guitar and a drummer, there was always someone there you could always try something out with. Like you always had someone to bounce ideas off of, and you had a way to document that as well. And it just kind of grew off of that. I remember growing up, there was time after time after time I'd want to play. I would want to jam out with Justin, but he was too busy reading recording forums and learning different techniques and stuff. But like, more specifically to this album, it was a really big convenience factor, because we really kind of did take we were a little hard pressed for time, but we did take our time with it as well.
Well, yeah, because we scrapped the first album and we were like, oh, we're gonna do another album.
Exactly, and my heart dropped the minute I found out we were gonna start from scratch. I didn't think we could do it in the time frame that we set amongst ourselves, but
well, it was at Tina's, and Tina's is great.
I mean,
where
those,
all good
those
ideas
combo meals
come
are
from.
great. But to add on to that, it a really big convenience factor that we could just take our time, go through however many takes we needed. We didn't need to like, worry about running out our budget or how much money we had to do there within the studio. It was just
Well, the only pressure that we had was the pressure that we put on ourselves,
right, and
which was a lot.
yeah, it was a lot, but it was great. I've been, that's honestly any sort of recorded project I've been involved in has been DIY recorded, aside from one instance way back in high school, and I was a nervous wreck the entire time, because we had one afternoon to get drums, guitar, and bass, and some vocals done, and we had maybe 4 or 5 hours to do it. So you were hard pressed for time, and it's nice being able to take a step back and say, all right, this is what I got to do for this track, and kind of hone in on what you're going to screw up on and what you can do to make it better.
There's part of me that's like, oh, I can record and it'll sound really good and stuff, but there are plenty of studios out there that I would love to go, just tear into the thousands of amps that they may have, and a bunch of high-end analog gear and all this stuff that they can do better than me. I would love to be able to do that. I do not have the money to do that. However, I do have some equipment and some microphones. So,
well, what it comes down to is ultimately like it's you got equipment on one side, but on the other hand you have like comfort and creativity. And we would have never done the song Strand if we didn't do it in the comfort of our own home, with like no pressure, to sit down and just make it the way we wanted it to be. Because that extra element of pressure, I think, impedes kind of the process, and like getting to be creative and sit there and just think about like, what overdubs you're going to do and like not be on the clock is, I think, the best part. And that's not to say that we won't go to the studio in the future. But for now, we really enjoyed doing it this way because it made it not that it wasn't a stressful experience, but it
definitely stressful.
But it was less stressful. Honestly, I played in downtune tunings for a long time before I was in anything called like stoner or doom, which is still not what I think we do. It was a conscious decision initially, like years ago, because my guitar sounded better being tuned in the tuning it was designed to fucking be in. And, I could go to heavier strings than that, but like if you're playing like a Stratocaster or something, like it sounds better if you play it the way it's designed to be. And that's just where we kind of started writing songs, and they're as heavy as we want them to be, and there's plenty of bands that absolutely kill it, and there's every day that I think, oh man, we should do a whole set of Drop C songs, 'cause it'd be great, because like I love Monolord and I love Sleep, and I love, even local bands. I love Whorehound and I love Dr. Smoke, like all these bands that tune down, and it's awesome. But at the same time, like I'm happy with what we're doing and the way that I create music and the way that I like, chord and stuff. It just works really well in standard, and it's just kind of our thing. I mean,
my 2 cents.
Yeah, outsider.
Heavy is a dynamic, not a tuning.
Boosh.
Bold statement. I like it.
Going back to kind of what I was talking about earlier about reaching out and like trying to provide something for the casual listener to make them realize that there's a lot more to music than what they're probably, than what they know is something. Heavy isn't, like you say, just like tuning low. Heavy can be just a riff that just fucking drives you, or it's something behind it. It doesn't have to be tuned to drop A to be the heaviest fucking shit you've ever heard in your life. So I like the fact that we don't, because I played in bands that, tune C and stuff like that.
Well, they already invented the heaviest shit I ever heard in my life, and it's Never in My Life by Mountain.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah. Well,
Carry on, sorry.
And that's in 440?
it is in 449.
Of course it is. They hadn't even invented drop D yet.
But I want people to hear something in the song and be like, yeah, like what is that? And like bob in their head, and like it's really, really catchy, and it's like that's heavy. That's what you're hearing.
Well, I think the heaviest thing, heaviness is about contrast and heaviness is about emotion. And I think I said drunkenly in a trailer once that the heaviest moments on To Build a Fire for me are the moments about contrast. So it's about, like, the song Geotaxis is really heavy because there is a very heavy riff in Geotaxis, but that's not what makes that song heavy. What makes it heavy is the fact that there's contrast and the fact that there's a very long build. That's why all the best movies are slow burners. Just to cite some movies I've watched recently, what is it? Wind River and Hold the Dark, slow burners. Just, there's not a lot of. It's very, most of the movie is very, but it's, when things finally happen, that's what it's about, and they're some of the most emotionally stirring movies I've seen. Yeah, it is out digitally. It's out also on CD. The package is beautiful. Again, designed by Joe. Please, if you're gonna give us $10, please jump online and we'll shoot you the physical copy because it's beautiful and we're really, really proud of it. Or come see us live.
Yes.
Come see us live.
Get it right off us there. Jakethehawk.bandcamp.com. Also available at blackseedrecords.com. I've written a lot of music in my life, and it's all felt very personal at the time. But this album feels very personal to me, particularly the title piece, "To Build a Fire." Just really works. Like, it just feels really good to play, and I'm just like, it's so cathartic to get it out, and it there's a lot there, and there's just whether musically or lyrically, there's a lot there for me, but what is there for me, I hope that somebody else, maybe something, I don't know, I hope that somebody else can find something in it that I can, because that's what art is really in the eye of the beholder. So it's in your hands now.